Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Dhas here, and welcome back to another lesson video. And I hope you enjoyed that little piece of concert footage at the beginning. It was a wonderful show. I wish you could have been there. Hopefully we can set up some gigs outside of Colombia if that ever comes up in the works. It would be nice to actually play around with this music. But I'll try to get some more footage because I am waiting on some people to send me some videos and some audio, so we'll see if I can upload anything and what comes out of it. But in the meantime, I think that video is pertinent to what we're talking about today, and that is slide. It's been a wonderful kind of 2 years-ish of exploring this thing and kind of learning how to play it in a different context. I'm not really someone who kind of fits in that blues or blues rock tradition for slide guitar. I'm coming at this more from an improviser, and, it was just more about a certain color. I'll get into why. So a disclaimer to anyone who happens to find this video. If you're looking for a lick or a language-based video on like how to play, in the style of somebody, this is not that video. So just telling you up front, I'm approaching this more from, a jazz improviser or someone who just improvises kind of in whatever style it is. It's not really bound by a certain genre. And I do want to preface that, there may be some overlap with other videos talking about, slide material, fit, maybe some exercises that you can do if you're just starting to get into slide. But this video is going to assume that you already understand a little bit about improvisation, because mainly the same rules apply. It's just that you're dealing with a different technique of playing. And at the end, I am going to talk about articulation, which I think is extremely important, and I think not many people really talk or discuss about this or what your options are. So if you do want to dive into that, maybe skip to that section of the video. But just to preface, I do also want to give a shout out to Giovanni de la Rosa. So if you see this, thanks so much, man. I wouldn't be playing slide without you. So Giovanni was one of my students, and this is kind of how I got into slide playing. He would be taking the concepts we were working on as with regards to improvisation and harmony, and applying it to slide guitar. And on hearing him do that, I thought, wow, that's really cool. Like, it kind of deviated from what I had considered slide to be. Duane Allman, Derek Trucks, that whole lineage of musicians, and, kind of the whole blues tradition. So I wanted to explore it, and I thought it would be a nice contrast to how I normally play, which, there's a lot of technique involved, and there's, some fast playing here and there, some big chords. I figured, this would be a really fun contrast because now there's almost a limitation in a way where, you have to physically carry the weight of something on one of your fingers. And while that doesn't actually lend to, playing hyper technical stuff, you gain a lot of stuff by just you gain something very different that wasn't previously available to you on the instrument. And also do bear in mind, I am playing 7-string after all. It's not the quote unquote stereotype for slide guitar, but I think it's just a way of saying, there are many ways of approaching this that can lead you down different paths. So I thought it was a wonderful color to try, and I've mentioned this in my tone breakdown, but this thing caused me to rethink, just a piece of glass caused me to rethink my entire rig and my entire concept of sound. So you may want to check that video out if you're interested. Now, if you're like me, when I first started to trying to play slide, the first time I ever tried, I think it was at a Guitar Center in Boston. I bought a slide, messed around with it, didn't enjoy it. It wasn't a fun experience for me. And I never touched it again until maybe about a decade later when I started really focusing on the sound. So scenario number one that is quite common is you go into a guitar store, you pick whatever slide the salesperson recommends to you, or gives you a rough recommendation if you've never played slide before. You try it and you're disappointed. So if you've found yourself in that position, what I would suggest is try listen to the aesthetic of what you like. Because maybe initially you don't want to spend $20-$30 on a really good slide, or maybe even $40 depending on the company. So you just want to try the thing, but you're kind of displeased rather, because you're not sounding like how you would expect. So I would say, hold your horses, hang on. There's a lot of patience that comes with it and with learning to play slide, because you're essentially getting rid of the frets, right? So just listen to the aesthetic and ask yourself, is this a sound I like? If the answer is just a yes, then maybe go get yourself a better slide, one that actually fits or is a material that you find interesting or that's pleasing to the ear, and then start working with that. So for anyone who's curious, I use slides made by the Rock Slide. They're wonderful. This one's a clear glass. It's a small clear glass. Has a tapered interior. I don't know if you can see that on the camera or if it's being picked up. It's got a little notch in here to rest, your finger against. And there's also this cutout at the bottom so that the slide already, because of the taper, I'll do this finger because it's a little bit more obvious, it matches your finger shape and it stops at kind of the second knuckle so that your finger can still freely move and it doesn't feel like your finger's stuck in a cast, which is, one of the main problems people struggle with when they begin to play slide. So they offer multiple materials: brass, nickel-plated brass, glass, and ceramic. Much like other people have commented on YouTube, glass is a little warmer, also more slippery. You can move around the strings a little quicker. Brass, heavier, brighter in some ways, although there's an interesting bass response that happens with brass. But you'll also get more string noise as a result. If that's something you dig, then by all means. And then ceramic supposedly sits somewhere in the middle. I haven't had a chance to try ceramic, but I'm a particular fan of glass. I used to have a brass slide that you might have seen on the YouTube channel, but that's since been lost thanks to just losing it at a gig or something. This stuff happens. But I particularly love glass, especially glass with like a heavy wall. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see the thickness of the wall. That is something you have to consider if you're choosing glass as your material of choice. But try them out, see what you dig. And then we want to talk about, okay, next question, what finger do I put the slide on? There's there's no, you probably won't use it on your index finger, I can say that much, but as far as these three go, there's no right or wrong. I opt for the pinky because I like to play chords every now and then, and I like to play, you know, just these big triads or big sounds, like, and then play. You know, then maybe comment with the slide in between. That's something I like to do occasionally. Like I do some, like, I don't know if I can do it with this one, but right, some moving voice stuff with chords depending on the chord shape. So that's why I went for slide on the pinky. You can do slide on your ring finger, Ella Derek Trucks, Brett Garsed, and I think it was Bonnie Raitt. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. They use their second finger. And that actually opens up some interesting, you know, you're able to get like minor thirds on the G and B strings if you're in standard tuning. If you use slide on this, you generally have more support because it's kind of lined up with your whole forearm, and just kind of naturally it's pretty close to your thumb. So you have a very interesting, just a very interesting sound that comes along with it. Either way, pick a finger, you know, see what feels comfortable for you and the approach that you would like, and sit with it for a good time. Lastly, and this is kind of all the tech stuff about getting a slide and, you know, figuring out where to use it and how to use it, you want to establish fit. I believe the rock slide advertises a pretty solid fit. You know, some people have said like you can stick your finger upside down and the slide won't fall off. I haven't really explored that. I'd like to try that, but I think I would need like an extra small because I've got particularly thin fingers, long and thin fingers. But I personally like having a little bit of room, and if anyone's not familiar, this will kind of prevent that cast-like feeling. You know, don't think of the slide, even if you choose to go with like the car seat and bottle route, Ella Duane Allman, you know, you don't want to just prop it up on your finger and have it rattling about, and then, you know, you're not going to have any control at that point. So what I noticed Derek Trucks did, and my student Giovanni had pointed this out, is there are 2 points of contact, which is this knuckle here and the fingertip. And actually, I kind of do that with this. You know, it fits reasonably well, but I find this just gives me a little bit more control. Right? It gives me a little bit more control, and prevents that kind of rattling around, loose feeling that many people struggle with when it comes to playing slide. Okay, so that's all the technical stuff out of the way about just fit, material, and so on and so forth. Let's actually get to playing. So what did I do when I first started out? I remember David Tronzo talking about this, who's got a wonderful video on my music masterclass that I think everyone should check out. And it was just start with playing one note. You don't want to really add any vibrato. At the end of the day, you just want to kind of get a sound going and tuning stability. I've got some other exercises that you may want to try for tuning. But then compare that with your fretted note. Also for reference, I'm kind of trying to hit like this kind of sweet spot on the slide. You can play with this whole range and it'll give you some interesting colors, but this will give you a certain range to work with. And I'm playing pretty much on top of the fret, kind of using my fingertip actually as a guide, as a visual guide. You want to try this on different strings as well because you're going to have to get used to the pressure. A note on pressure, you don't have to have your action crazy high, although I have mine somewhere around 3 millimeters-ish. There are many slide players who play with like 2.8. I think I've seen like 2.6, 2.5. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but some people, I think Derek Trucks famously said he tries to get it as low as he can get to be able to play slide. You want to have your action high enough that the string has room to vibrate. But, you know, given the way I normally play, which some people can go check out, I don't want it so impossibly high that I can't do any of the stuff I normally do, so I have to find this happy medium. For me, it just happens to be 3. For you, it might be lower. For you, it might also be higher. So then what you want to do is just move a fret. Just a fret. So, by the way, I'm just controlling everything from the volume knob, but... And make sure that's in tune. Do it also a fret down. Also, when you're starting to now move to different frets, you want to try this in different zones of the instrument because the fret size obviously changes. What if I did it down here? Or 1 fret. Then move to 2 frets or a whole step. Right? Don't feel like your thumb's kind of floating about, by the way, so you don't feel like you have to kind of clamp down, because that's also going to help you be able to move. And just try think. A note on that, I'm adding vibrato, but in the initial stages you don't want to add vibrato just so you can really get your tuning in, your tuning really dialed in, sorry. Eventually you can add vibrato more as a sonic choice and a question of taste, but when you're working on fundamentals, just really try get your tuning in order. Okay, wonderful. Then what I would suggest, and this is what I started to do, is try 1-string scales. This is also a great fretboard visualization exercise. So let's say we're playing D major. Right, so I've got D here on the B string. You want to make sure everything's pretty smooth, not like too much jerking about. You want to make sure everything's like really flowing nicely. And if you can, try not to pluck every time you play, just so everything's moving well. Oop, that's a little sharp. That was flat, but... Also, a note on muting on the right hand. So those who can't really see what my right hand's doing just because of the camera angle, I've got my thumb muting all the strings below what I'm playing. Depending on, usually it's one of these two or both, is muting everything above. So that way I only have the string that I'm actually playing on. Right? I only have that sounding at any given moment. Then you want to try variations of this. So let's say I'm in the key of C, right? Do sequences, right? You can even make up your own sequences, or... Right there, I'm jumping up a fourth and then going down the scale. You're just trying to get your hands used to moving around the fretboard with a slide. Now this one's an interesting one, another interesting exercise. Try to play arpeggios. And by the way, just it should go without saying, you know, I'm not really focusing on behind the slide stuff yet, or like, right? I'm not focusing on any of that yet. Try use the slide as much as possible so that your hands get used to carrying the weight of the actual slide on your finger, and also so that your tuning naturally improves. So what I would do is, let's say I have A, right? I'm not trying to do this super fast, I'm just trying to do it in tune, right? What about A major? And you're just trying to get to where you need to be, right? You can even do these on 1 string, so take D. You know, this will open up avenues as an improviser, right? So let's say if someone says you're playing D major, then I have I'm thinking more in terms of, these are my options, as opposed to, oh, here's a lick that I know will work, but I can't really manipulate it. This is the difference, by the way, between licks and language. Licks are things that you kind of just parrot or shoehorn. Language is when you've internalized it enough that you begin to be able to manipulate the idea at will. Okay, so those are some basic exercises, but now we're going to get into the last bit of the video. I know we're coming up on 20 minutes here, but I hope this gives some people food for thought. And this is the concept of articulation, because it's all well and good. I think one of the things I initially struggled with until Giovanni kind of just said, hey, think about articulation a bit. And as I've mentioned, go check out Giovanni. He's a wonderful guy if you can find videos of him online. You know, maybe you're just worried about moving the slide and playing it in tune. But then where the magic really comes in is, how do you get into a note and how do you get out of a note? So what are the most common articulations that you would expect with slide? Well, one, let's just start with staying on the same note. So I'm here on D. Just the tiniest vibrato. Now your vibrato can be as small as wide or as wide as you want it to be. Very, very minimal. Pretty wide, or you can get as wide as you need to, right? But that already starts getting into vocal territory. Then, one thing I really love is half-step movement. So sliding into a note, but coming at it from a half step below or a half step above. Right? So one more time, just... That's pretty in tune, but here's the thing. Treat the fret as this whole distance, and that will actually give you a little bit more than a half step movement, and that's where you can exaggerate. Oop, that's a little loud, but that's almost a whole step, but it's still kind of in that C sharp to D territory. Now when that factors into melodies, right? Right? So what about, same thing, but half step above? Right? Now what if I went just a little under? Gives you a different color. You can do the same thing with whole steps. So let's say approaching D by a whole step. It's a different sound, different color altogether. Then you can try now you can start mixing these little sounds into your melodies. So instead of just deliberately doing 1, 2, 3, right? Sorry. For example, one thing I love to do is maybe just to accent that last note is dip under and then slide into it. That's actually a minor third jump. It's a very different sound altogether. Then so as you start mixing and matching, you know, for example, this was one I actually got from Giovanni, right? So you have a half step slide, but it's a deeper half step slide, right? So you're getting a little bit more of the microtonal thing going on. Right? Other things you can think about when playing slide. I know that on the video it didn't come out as clearly as I would have liked, but you can do stuff with harmonics. You know, it's a color. Actually extends your range a little bit. That would be beyond, but... Right? Also, speaking of, that's another articulation to try. It's kind of this little... let me see if I can do it with just my fingers normally so you get the idea of what I'm aiming for. Right? But it's much more fluid, like a singer. So... You can even do that just by whipping up to the upper note and then coming back down. And I think that that kind of covers most of the articulations that I'm currently using. Obviously, there are probably plenty more by more experienced slide players that, they probably would rather call attention to. You can even do some chromatic stuff. Right? So you can start experimenting with these sounds, and the idea is that you now have plenty to work with to start building melodies, or start getting the melodies from here and here out onto the instrument. So I hope this helps. Try it out at home. Let me know how it goes in the comments, and have fun. Take care, guys.